Don't get me wrong.
New in financial services. And
Can you give me an example?
Well, I could say, debanking. This is where a lot of the debanking comes from, is these agencies. So debanking is when you as either a person or your company are literally kicked out of the banking system.
Like they did to Kanye.
How, Sway?
Exactly, like they did to Kanye. My partner Ben's father has been debanked.
Really?
We had an employee who
For what?
For having the wrong politics, for saying unacceptable things. Under current banking regulations, here's a great thing. Under current banking regulations, after all the reforms of the last 20 years, there's now a category called a politically exposed person, PEP. And if you are a PEP, you are required by financial regulators to kick them off of to kick them out of your bank. You're not allowed to have
What if you're politically on the left?
Well, that's fine.
And their solution is going to be, if you don't want me to call you a Nazi, don't act like a Nazi. Think like a...
because they're not politically exposed.
So no one on the left gets debanked?
I have not heard of a single instance of anybody on the left getting debanked.
Can you tell me what the person that you know did, what they said that got them debanked?
Oh, well, I mean, David Horowitz is a right-wing, he's pro-Trump. I mean, he's said all kinds of things. He's been very anti-Islamic terrorism. He's been very worried about migration, all these things.
And they debanked him for that?
Yeah, they debanked it. So you get kicked out of your bank account. You get kicked out of you can't do credit card transactions. But, by the way, you can't
How is that legal?
Well, exactly. So this is the thing. And then you go into this thing of like, well, this is where the government and the companies get intertwined, back to your fascism point, which is there's a constitutional amendment that says the government can't restrict your speech, but there's no constitutional amendment that says the government can't debank you.
Let me check my account because that's kind of scary with my bank.
Right. And so if they can't do the one thing, they do the other thing. And then they don't have to debank you. They just have to put pressure on the private company banks to do it. And then the private company banks do it because they're expected to. But the government gets to say, we didn't do it. It was the private company that did it. And of course, JP Morgan can decide who they want to have as customers, of course, right? Because they're a private company. And so it's this sleight of hand that happens. So it's basically, it's a privatized sanctions regime that lets bureaucrats do to American citizens the same thing that we do to Iran.
It's a private company. They can do whatever they want. But if it's X, they can't.
Just kick you out of the financial system. And so this has been happening to all the crypto entrepreneurs in the last 4 years. This has been happening to a lot of the fintech entrepreneurs, anybody trying to start any kind of new banking service, because they're trying to protect the big banks. And then this has been happening, by the way, also in legal fields of economic activity that they don't like. And so a lot of this started about 15 years ago with this thing called Operation Choke Point, where they decided to, as marijuana started to become legal, as prostitution started to become legal, and then guns, which there's always a fight about. Under the Obama administration, they started to debank legal marijuana businesses, escort businesses, and then gun shops, just like your gun manufacturers, and just like you're done, you're out of the banking system. And so if you're running a medical marijuana dispensary in 2012, like guess what? You're doing your business all in cash.
Oh, so that's why all the pot dealers are doing business on the streets. Interesting.
Because you literally can't get a bank account. You can't get a Visa terminal. You can't process transactions. You can't do payroll. You can't do direct deposit. You can't get insurance. Like none of that stuff you've been sanctioned, right? None of that stuff is available. And then this administration extended that concept to apply it to tech founders, crypto founders, and then just generally political opponents. So that's been like super pernicious.
I wasn't aware of that.
Oh, 100%. And this is called, so it was Operation Choke Point 1.0 was 15 years ago against the pot and the guns. Choke Point 2.0 is primarily against their political enemies and then to their disfavored tech startups. And it's hit the tech world like we've had like 30 founders debanked in the last 4 years.
Really?
Yeah. It's been a big recurring pattern.
30.
This is one of the reasons why we ended up supporting Trump. It's like we can't live in this world. We can't live in a world where somebody starts a company that's a completely legal thing and then they literally like get sanctioned, right, and embargoed by the United States government through a completely unaccountable, no due process. None of this is written down. There's no rules. There's no court. There's no decision process. There's no appeal.
It's like they practice with the Me Too movement. There's no appeal. You're just guilty because yes.
There's no decision process.
If you really think about it, in a way, the citizen is an experiment.
Who do you appeal to, right? Like who do you go to get your bank account back, right?
God.
And then there's also the civil asset forfeiture side of it, which is right the other side, and that doesn't happen to us, but that happens to people in a lot of places now who get arrested, and all of a sudden, the state takes their money.
Yes, but that happens to people if they get pulled over and they have a large amount of cash in some states.
Right. Or, there've been, there's well-publicized examples of like, there was like, there'll be some investigation into like, safe deposit boxes. And the next thing you know, the feds have seized all the contents of the safe deposit boxes, and that stuff never gets returned. And so it's this, and this is when Trump says the deep state, like the way we would describe it is it's administrative power. It's political power being administered not through legislation, right? So there's no defined law that covers this. It's not through regulation. Right, there's nothing you can't go sue a regulator to fix this. It's not through any kind of court judgment. It's just raw power.
And some people would advise, well, just think like a left wing. No, you can't say that. I would never say that about a right winger too if I want less of my tax dollars to go to Ukraine.
Are you insane?
Raw administrative power. It's the government or politicians just deciding that things are going to be a certain way, and then they just apply pressure until they get it.
So what happens to those 30 tech people that you know?
Start to go into a different field, like try to do something different and try to get,
complete upending of your life.
Yeah, complete upending of your life, and try to change your life, try to get out of try to get away from the eye of Sauron. Try to get out of whatever zone got you into this and keep applying for new bank accounts at different banks and hope that at some point a bank will say, oh, okay, it's okay. We've checked and it's now all right.
Whoa.
But there's no...
So what do they do with their money? Like what happens?
You go to cash.
You go to cash?
You can't have a... Yeah.
So where do you put it?
I don't under your mattress.
People say because of abortion, they don't want to go back in time. But for this, they do want to go back in time to tell other people, go use cash to make a business. Wow. And if you have too much cash on you, oh my God, that's illegal. I will take it freely away. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That is so insane.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
if someone has $30 million in the bank and they get debanked.
Diamonds, art, do you... I don't know, go overseas somewhere.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It just happens. And again, it's really, really important. There's no fingerprints. Like there's no person who...
There's no stick above the strings.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It just happened. And we can trace it back because we understand exactly, we know the politicians involved, and we know how the agencies work, and we know how the pressure's applied, and we know that these banks get phone calls and so forth. And so we can loosely, like we understand the flow of power as it happens.
But if this happens with the average citizen, you're
receiving end of this, your specific instance of it, like you can't trace it back, and there's nothing you can do about it.
What are the instances? Like what is the company? What are they trying to do, and how do they run afoul?
Well, all the crypto startups in the last basically 4 years. So remember the crypto thing got like really, sort of everybody got excited and like NFTs and like all that stuff, and then it just like stopped.
Yeah.
And the reason it stopped is because basically every crypto founder, every crypto startup, they either got debanked personally and forced out of the industry, or their company got debanked and so it couldn't keep operating, or they got prosecuted, charged, or they got threatened with being charged. This is a fun twist. This is a fun little twist. So the SEC sort of has been trying to kill the crypto industry under Biden, and this has been a big issue for us because we're the biggest crypto startup investor. The SEC can investigate you, they can subpoena you, they can prosecute you, they can do all these things, but they don't have to do any of those things to really damage you. All they have to do is they issue what's called a Wells notice, and the Wells notice is a notification that you may be charged at some point in the future. Like you're like on notice that you might be doing something wrong, and they might be coming after you at some point in the future.
Oh my God.
Okay, so
terrifying. That's
yes,
the eye.
The eye of Sauron is on you. Okay.
Yeah.
Now trying to be a company with a Wells notice doing business with anybody else.
Oh my God.
Right. Try to work with a big company. Try to get access to a bank. Try to do.
So
anything.
that's when they support DEI initiatives, and
Well, and then the SEC under Biden became the SEC under Biden became a direct application of exactly. So DEI, they did a lot with that, and then ESG, all the ESG stuff, and ESG is a very malleable concept, and they piled all kinds of new requirements into that. So through this process, the SEC could basically just simply dictate what companies do.
And it's expanding everywhere. It's so bad. It's going into army. It's going into businesses, in school, bada bing boom bash. It's going into my favorite movie. It's going into my favorite game.
Here, vegetables.
Thank you.
So, I'm non-binary.
What does that mean?
It means I don't feel like a man or a woman.
If you are neither a man nor a woman, then what are you?
Non-binary. I just said, and I'm going to use they instead of she from now on.
If this is because I have criticized your dress or your manners...
It isn't!
Under the Kuhn, The term for one whose gender does not match the one given to them at birth was a cunithlok. Perhaps you are like that.
Why do you have to keep picking at it? Why can't you just be happy for me?
Evitash, chakra to ebra.
So I'm supposed to struggle with who I am? Even if I don't feel like I fit? Even if I feel wrong?
No, you misunderstood.
Then say it better! Why am I never enough for you?
It kind of makes sense now why so many people and games and movies has so much DEI these days. It's because they're afraid of going out of business.
With no accountability at all. Like there are hearings where they get yelled at, but like nothing changed. Nothing ever happened in a hearing that ever changed anything.
Wow.
It was just the raw application of power. Right. And so,
And this is your friends this has happened to.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. And we had, like I said, we had an employee who got debanked because he had crypto in his job title. He was doing crypto policy for us, and his bank booted him because he.
That's it.
Because they did a screen across. It's what they told us is they did a screen across their customer base.
Just anyone with crypto.
Because anybody with crypto became a politically exposed person.
Ladies and gentlemen, it goes even further because imagine now if they are controlling AI.
I was not nearly as aware as I should have been about all these things that you're saying. I didn't know this. I did know about the banks, and I certainly did know that they were cracking down on AI the same way they cracked down on social media.
The AI thing was very alarming. We had meetings this spring that were the most alarming meetings I've ever been in, where they were taking us through their plans, and it was
Like what kind of? Can you talk about it?
basically just full government control, like this sort of thing. There will be a small number of large companies that will be completely regulated and controlled by the government. They told us they just said don't even start startups, like don't even bother. Like there's just no way. There's no way that they can succeed. There's no way that we're going to permit that to happen.
Wow.
Yeah, they said this is already over. It's going to be 2 or 3 companies, and we're going to control them, and that's that. Like this is already finished.
Oh my God. No. Now, when you leave a meeting like that, what do you do?
You go endorse Donald Trump.
I always said that the government can never control the public because the public is just too much. But to stay in power the way the left-leaning think right now, they need over-regulation, dictatorship, and no other company can exist. And if you can ask AI and they can search all the articles online, it's a bad look for the left-leaning people because they are not very consistent sometimes. So they have to regulate the AI because the AI is very left-leaning.
It's a concept called regulatory capture. And so the way, and this has happened many times for, hundreds of years. This is like a very well-established kind of thing in economics and politics. So suppose you're a big bank, suppose you're Jamie Dimon, you run JP Morgan Chase, like what's like the biggest possible threat of what you could possibly face? It's that there's some disruptive change that comes along that upends your entire business. You're Kodak,
Right.
You're Kodak. You're making a ton of money on analog film, and then digital cameras come along and you get destroyed. And in your obituary, it's like you're the idiot,
Blockbuster Video.
Blockbuster Video. Like that's the cautionary tale. Those are the ghost stories that those guys tell around the campfire at night.
Which reminds me of the phone Nokia that totally disappeared.
Right. They're just absolutely terrifying.
Right.
And like business schools teach you, like that's the one thing you do not want to do. And so there's 2 ways to try to deal with that. One is you could try to invent the future before it happens to you, but that's hard because you're running a big company and, these startups are out there doing all these crazy things, and can you really do that? And it's hard and frisky and dangerous. The other thing you can do is you can go to the government. You can basically say, okay, we would like to propose basically a trade, which is we would like the government to put up a wall of regulation. Right, we would like the government to put in place rules, right, that are potentially thousands of pages long, right? And in fact, the more the better.
And now you understand why you have to read so many small letters.
If you thought social media censorship was bad, this has the potential to be 1,000 times worse. And the reason is social media is important, but at the end of the day, it's quote, just people talking to each other. AI is going to be the control layer on everything. Right. So AI is going to be the control layer on how your kids learn at school. Right? It's going to be the control layer on who gets loans. It's going to be the control layer on does your house open when you come to the front door.
Wow.
It's going to be the control layer on everything. Right. And so if that gets wired into the political system the way that the banks did and the way that social media did, like we are in for a very bad future.
That means if Thanksgiving is like this, and people won't like this, and they add the system like this,
it's going to be the control layer on does your house open when you come to the front door.
That means almost nobody can celebrate Thanksgiving by American popular vote standard, with people in the shadows deciding what is good.
When we think about totalitarianism, we think about literally World War II. We think about Nazis in jackboots with like tanks and guns and, beating people up and killing people. Like that's our mental, and that's, you might call it that hard totalitarianism, right? That's like very clearly like violent totalitarianism. But there's this other version you might call soft totalitarianism, which is just rules and power exercised arbitrarily that just simply suppresses everything, right? And this is speech control and debanking and all these other things that we've been talking about. And that is, the good news is they're not coming up and like beating you up in the middle of the night.
No, they're not coming to beat you up in the night. But if you post like a meme like J.D. Vance posted online, this is their reaction.
What is happening here? What is happening here? What is happening? What's happening here? What's happening? What's happening here?
So do you want a person that thinks like this, that gets never banned or debanked by PEP? Or you voted for Trump, you're not invited. We're going to program the AI bots to lock the doors if you come at the door. I don't know. Do you see the future that they might normalize? Because they think like this.
So that happened in banking. That's what they've been doing in social media. This has been the same. It's been the same. And by the way, this has happened in many other industries. By the way, this happened in the food. The food industry is greatly consolidated. That's a lot of what's happened in that industry as well. It's the intertwining of government and the company, right? Because at that point, it's like, okay, is this a private company? Yes, like it's still a private company. It has a stock price. It has a CEO. Does the CEO have to do everything that the relevant cabinet secretary tells him to do? Yes, he does. Why does he have to do that? Because if not, it's going to be investigations and subpoenas and prosecutions and fraudological examinations for the rest of his life.
Wow.
Everything.
So it's essentially what we accuse the CCP of doing in China.
It's the so if you combine banking and social media and now AI, you have basically privatized social credit score. Right, is where you end up with this, right? And this goes back to the trucker strike thing. You don't have to threaten to take away somebody's kids. You just you threaten to take away their insurance. You don't threaten to take away their insurance. It's not government insurance that's being taken away. The same thing has happened in the insurance industry. It's consolidated down to a small handful of companies. They're super regulated. If the government doesn't want you to have insurance, you're not going to have insurance. And there's no constitutional right to insurance. So there's no appeal process.
And then it makes you wonder, what is the end game if I have to think in a specific way to get the points to live normal?
You don't have to threaten to take away somebody's kids. You just you threaten to take away their insurance. You don't threaten to take away their insurance. It's not government insurance that's being taken away. The same thing has happened in the insurance industry. It's consolidated down to a small handful of companies. They're super regulated. If the government doesn't want you to have insurance, you're not going to have insurance. And there's no constitutional right to insurance, so there's no appeal process. We're back to the debanking thing, and so that happened in banking. That's been happening in internet, in tech, social media generally. It's been happening in many other sectors, and then it's happening specifically in AI. And what you have in AI is you have a set of CEOs of some of the big AI companies that want this to happen, because again, their big threat is that we're going to fund a startup that's going to eat their lunch, right? It's going to really screw them up. And so they're like, look, if we could just take the position we have and lock it in with government protection, the trade is we'll do whatever the government wants. Wow. And if you assume the government is controlled by, people who want to censor and punish and cancel their political opponents, that's going to come right along with it. And so that's why when these AI systems come out, like 9 times out of 10, they're tremendously politically biased. You can do this today. You just go on any of these systems today, and you just you start asking really basic questions.
Gemini's the best example of that, right? When they had the multiracial Nazis,
the black Nazis.
Yeah.
Once again, we're back to the Nazis. Yes. So it turns, according to Gemini, Hitler had an excellent DEI policy.
Yeah.
Now, in reality, he did not. And it's important to understand that in reality he did not. But yeah, Gemini happily threw up black Nazis because they programmed it to be biased. They programmed it in a political direction.
If we're going to have a social credit system like China, hey, I don't mind knowing it is happening, but at least tell me the truth that it's happening so I can play it as if I'm a left-winger.
Don't get me wrong, makosa kita bong. Put the fire na mi blonde kush hash purple skunk criollo colombici jam jam. Dur loqueta verdetta welcome.